What's up, guys? Today we're going to be going over a team with lead Shadow Hypno, closer Bastiodon, and the switch up is the safe switch Shadow Hypno. So it's a take on the classical team with Shadow Hypno essentially as the safe switch replacement for Deoxys Defense. This team brought me to 2686 at its peak, which while there was not a leaderboard at the time, it would have been top 5 in today's leaderboard. So it does have promise, but at the same time, I feel like I did get very lucky on leads. And I'm not sure how much of the success can be attributed to Shadow Hypno. But without further ado, let's go over a couple of these games. And I'll kind of try and point out how the Shadow Hypno performs differently to the Deoxys Defense. So game 1, we have Noctowl versus Shadow Hypno. Not a good start, but we bring in the Shadow Hypno, and you can see these confusions are absolutely chunking. But Noctowl generally carries Nightshade, but elects to go for the Sky attack, and they bring in the regular Stunfisk. So not a great matchup for Shadow Hypno. Fire punches aren't resisted, but if you're throwing an elemental punch that isn't getting super effective damage, it's not going to be doing very much. The main benefit of Hypno is its versatility and its unpredictability. So, but even so, because they try to farm me down, that Stunfisk is extremely low. Either way, I don't really have an option except to go back into the Victreebel. I know that they probably have a couple charge moves stored up, but I know I can comfortably tank one. And actually, they only have one charge move stored up. So Noctowl comes back in, and I really have to hope my Bastiodon can take down their next 2 Pokemon. And it's looking good, as I still have 2 shields, and their Noctowl stays in to throw off a Nightshade. And yeah, as expected, something that doesn't perform very well against Bastiodon. Cresselia is in the back. So this is a pretty long matchup just because Cresselia and Bastiodon are both incredibly tanky. Neither do super effective damage. It's going to be regular non-stab damage from the Cresselia and stab damage from Bastiodon. And of course Bastiodon wins this matchup pretty handily, even with double shields. And I even elect to bring in the Victreebel to speed it up a little bit. At this point, it just clears a little bit of energy too. And they even try and bait the shield with the Grass Knot. Allowing to Victreebel actually to finish off that Cresselia and do quite a bit of damage to Noctowl, almost take Noctowl out as well. So once again, showcasing really the power of Victreebel and Bastiodon, not really the safe switch capabilities of Shadow Hypno in that first set. I will note as well, since I know this question will be asked, is that in my opinion, Shadow Hypno and regular Hypno are kind of interchangeable in terms of this team. I don't think one is necessary over the other. So instantly they bring in their Shadow Hypno against my Victreebel, and I'm gonna stay in and switch to Bastiodon because Bastiodon, I would say, is a hard counter to Hypno. You don't even really need to throw charge moves just because you're so tanky, and generally Shadow Hypnos don't carry Focus Blast, which is the one way you can kind of deal with Bastiodon. Even if they're carrying Shadow Ball, it's not really that big of a threat. As you can see, I actually get a little bit greedy here, and I'm at full energy, and I'm still just continuing to farm down, and I don't end up paying, which is very nice. But I know what's coming back in. It's the Glaring Stunfisk, and I want to get these Flamethrowers off to... Oh, it wasn't. So I guess wrong. Flamethrower, not as effective as Stone Edge there, and I realize I'm in a bit of trouble. I don't want to have to play Shadow Victreebel into Deoxys with all that energy, so I'm switching into Hypno in hopes that they will throw energy at the Shadow Hypno. The other thing that I've noticed in Sims is that while you can do super effective damage to Galarian Stunfisk with Fire Punch, it outpaces you to Rock Slides, so it actually wins in the 2 shield versus Shadow Hypno. But at this point, it looks like I'm content letting Shadow Hypno go down and trying to play around the 2 shield on Shadow Victreebel versus the rest of their team. Either way, get that Fire Punch off still. Does decent damage. They elect not to shield, which is best case scenario for me. I think this is a Rock Slide, so I just let it through. I'm allowed to let one thing through. But Victreebel is getting kind of low, and I might actually just go down to fast moves here. It's going to be very close. Yep, I do. So maybe I should have elected to shield that Rock Slide, but I think that would have just left me open for Psycho Booster or Rock Slide from the Deoxys Defense. So this game against FP Sticks. So unfortunately, this was the day where I played him 3 times within about an hour and a half or so. Same teams and everything, and my team is pretty advantaged here in my opinion, and I guess FP Sticks' opinion as well. So as you can see, he swaps right into Tropius. I swap right into Bastiodon. This is an incredibly hard counter. I'm going to end this with a ton of energy and not having to use any charge moves at all. I can bring that energy into the next Pokemon as well. I think he might be trying to leave more health up on my Bastiodon as well. I usually end up these matches a bit lower, or maybe he was having some fast move issues. But I assumed he was going to come in and farm me down, but not with that Pokemon. I expected the Upskew to come back in. But anyways, I do play FP Sticks a bunch more times, and they would be shown in these videos, but I figured that watching the same teams play over and over and over wouldn't be a very good learning experience. So I cut one of the battles, and then the other battle I was just going to use to show kind of how you can adapt to playing the same team and and improve on your result. Because I think FP Sticks does a good job of actually kind of playing this more unwinnable matchup, despite the fact that I have more knowledge. So what I do learn eventually is that this Azumarill that he's running does not have Hydro Pump. So because it doesn't have Hydro Pump, my Bastiodon in later sets, I'm allowed to just put him against the Azumarill, and the Azumarill can't do anything. But I didn't know that at the time, and I know that now as I see the play rough come out. So you can see Shadow Hypno, once again, not really being used as a pivot as I'm winning a lot of these leads. But I do think Shadow Hypno is extremely good at protecting the lead. I would say even more so than Deoxys Defense. So if you do win the lead running that Fire Punch and Thunder Punch, there's not a lot that between that and Bastiodon you can't just straight up counter. So here we see Purified Hypno versus Shadow Hypno. No Purified bonus, but I know if he's staying in, he's probably got Shadow Ball. There's no reason for him otherwise. If that's probably his best Psychic counter. But I'm just going to throw my punches. I get the first shields by charging up to a pretend Shadow Ball. So now we're even on shields. And I feel like he's going to Shadow Ball again. And yeah, I predict it correctly. And I'm going to try and burn another shield here. So I think I try and switch into Victreebel to catch the Shadow Ball. Because otherwise it'll KO my Hypno. And I do. It works out. And I'm able to finish him off before the confusion comes through, but the Toxicroak comes in and almost finishes me off. If I didn't get to that Leaf Blade, this game would be completely different. But at this point, I'm in a pretty tough situation. It's all dependent on what their final Pokemon is. I send out Hypno as kind of like a sacrifice, and it's an Azumarill, so this is going to be really, really tough. I'm going to get quite a bit of damage off from the Thunder Punch before I switch the Hypno out. And now it's just the classic Azumarill versus Bastiodon matchup with no shields. So this is Azumarill favored, but it is incredibly close because I got the Thunder Punch damage off. And as you can see, I'm going to barely get him down and not quite get the Toxicroak. And unfortunately, because Toxicroak has a 2-turn fast move and Hypno is a 4-turn fast move, I do drop this game. But yeah, that was a better example, I guess, of how Shadow Hypno can be used as a pivot, even though we still lost. So another favorable lead, Victreebel versus Azumarill, and they switch into Sableye. This is best case scenario. I'm going to stay in, eliminate this threat. This is an incredible threat to Hypno, and pretty good against Bastiodon too. So being able to take that out with Victreebel and see their third Pokemon is a huge advantage. But the problem is, that Pokemon is Alolan Marowak, which my team very heavily struggles with. This is one scenario where Shadow Hypno does perform a lot better than Deoxys Defense. And that is against Alolan Marowak. You don't have those double resist counters. You have a very powerful Confusion that's dealing damage. And since I don't run Rock Slide, it's pretty much the same thing. I'm just running a neutral attack or charge attack. And Azumarill comes in, and he's electing not to shield anything from my Hypno. They're up 2-0 on shields, but a Play Rough comes through, and it's not even enough. Shadow Hypno is actually surprisingly tanky for a Shadow. So Marowak comes back in as well, and Shadow Hypno forces the shields, and I'm able to go in with Bastiodon and kind of secure the victory. They give up. They realize that they have no play. I think they were hoping that there was maybe another grass type. So anyways, went 3 out of 5. I think this was my second ever set using Hypno. I don't really know the matchups at this point. And yeah, this is kind of pathetic. I wouldn't watch me try and catch any of these Pokemon rewards. But there are a couple scenarios in which Shadow Hypno does perform better. The main scenario that it kind of does not is against dark types. And with the recent rise in dark types, especially because of the PB Poke rankings, there's going to be a lot more Umbreon and Sableye around, and Hypno just gets completely shut down if that gets swapped in. So we have Victreebel against Azumarill, and they elect to stay in. This doesn't happen very often, and I honestly think it's a pretty good play against the Shadow Victreebel team is to stay in with your Azumarill, because then the Shadow Victreebel team has to make a tough choice here. So there's an Alolan Marowak, which clearly counters most of my team. I now have to switch in to an unfavorable situation to try and deal with it, and obviously they're going to switch out, and it's a double ghost lineup. So double ghost, very good against Shadow Hypno. Not much he can do against Sableye at all. You're going to see the first punch shielded, and the second punch doesn't do very much damage, and the confusions, even though they're double resisted, don't really do much either. At this point, I'm kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. I go in with Bastiodon, and I tank a foul play before going into Shadow Victreebel, because I know he has 2 foul plays stored up. He was able to farm down the Shadow Hypno, and I tank that because I realize Bastiodon has to be my MVP here. Unfortunately, he gets to another foul play, and I'm assuming this is going to be a Bone Club, and he has another Bone Club stored up too. So this game is looking very rough. Obviously Fire Spin doesn't do very much damage, but okay, I'm actually just able to pull that one out. I thought I remembered losing to a double ghost team, but I might have played him later with a different team. So that actually worked out better than expected. You might see some repeats of teams here. I don't remember. I just remember that these were long queue times, like extremely long, 15 plus minutes between games, and then I would only find the same players. So here's a matchup I actually haven't talked about very much, because you don't see it very much. But this is Cresselia versus Shadow Victreebel. So most of the time you have to get out versus psychic types, or with psychic fast moves. But Cresselia is an odd case because it just has Psycho Cut, and while it hits for super effective damage, it kind of still tickles. You can see I'm taking like quite a bit of damage still, but I'm able to do the 2-for-1 shield trade, and out comes Obstagoon. So now I'm in a bit of a tough spot. Obstagoon is actually really, really tough for this team to handle, because Counter just absolutely eats Bastiodon alive, and Night Slashes eat Hypno alive, and he's gotten quite a bit of energy on this Obstagoon, and if I switch Hypno in, I'll probably just be able to feint him from a couple of Night Slashes alone. So luckily he doesn't get any procs, and he swaps into a Swampert. So Swampert also very bad for this team. Once Shadow Victreebel is down, both charge moves on Shadow Hypno are resisted, and Bastiodon obviously gets countered by every single Mud Boy that there is, and at this point, yeah, I just leave it. It's not worth when I have to wait so long for queues. So, but yeah, the Swampert in the back is a danger. This game I think is my first ever time versus Pelipper, and I'm kind of just doing some attack damage to see like how many shields I'll have to spend. In hindsight, I might have been able to stay in versus the Pelipper, but it would have been a 2-for-1 shield scenario, and I would have lost a lot of health and not really been able to do much with the Shadow Victreebel after that. So I swap into Shadow Hypno, and they swap into Azumarill. So this is kind of common, and with Thunder Punch, Shadow Hypno actually not only outpaces Azumarill to charge moves, but you also do more with the fast move. So this is an ideal safe switch scenario because you are in control of how many shields you want to spend in order to take down the enemy, assuming an even shield start. So in this case, the Azumarill had an extra shield, so they are going to be able to take Hypno down, but they're going to come out with no energy. And I know this, so I'm going to go into the Bastiodon. I talked about this earlier. If you aren't able to win safe switch back, you want to be able to go back on the Bastiodon first, so you can force them to switch into something with your Shadow Hypno. But they come in with Pelipper, which is very odd. So I'm assuming there's something that's even weaker in the back. Oh, and I clicked Stone Edge too fast, and where Flamethrower is 4 times super effective, and I probably could have KO'd. But I swap into the Hypno for a sack swap. I had to make, like, that was a very good play, but the only reason I had to make that very good play was because of my misplay in the first place. So this ends up being a pretty sweaty game, but yeah, just remember, use your Flamethrower, not your Stone Edge against Abomasnow if that's the case, because that will one-shot and Stone Edge will not. So this battle, Lantern, another favorable lead into Vigoroth, so another pretty good scenario. I actually elect to swap out here. I think I just wanted to test Shadow Hypno out a bit more. This is where I would swap Deoxys Defense in against Vigoroth, and Deoxys Defense not only resists the counters, but also does super effective damage with his counter back. And at that point, you actually don't have to spend any shields and you can farm down. But in this case, I have to spend a shield, and honestly, I'm in danger of just getting farmed down and losing switch advantage to Vigoroth. But luckily, my opponent did not use their fast move at a good time, and I got a free confusion in. So I'm able to keep switch advantage, which is extremely important. I don't want Lantern versus Bastiodon, and I don't want Skarmory versus Victreebel. So as soon as they see this, I have switch advantage, and they're locked in Skarmory, they just give up at that point. Lantern can't farm down Bastiodon to get an advantage against Shadow Hypno, so it's kind of over for them at that point. This matchup, Galarian Stunfisk. Galarian Stunfisk is very good versus the rest of my team. I need to eliminate him with the Hypno. So this player plays it very smart, charges up to 8 mud shots, and so I have to shield the Rock Slide. And in comes Shadow Shiftry. So I didn't realize this was Shadow Shiftry at the time. I don't really know if I would have played it differently. I think this is the first Shadow Shiftry I've ever run into. But these Leaf Blades really hurt. That's a ton of damage. And this guy is just charging up over and over. I can only eat 2 Leaf Blades, so I actually have to spend my last shield here, and that's very dangerous. They still have 1 shield, and unfortunately I'm running 0 shields versus Galarian Stunfisk, which, as I've mentioned, completely eats my team. So I'm able to get to another Flamethrower here, which is actually potentially game saving. I don't really remember the outcome of this game. And they swap out at the same time, and there's Meganium. So another Pokemon that is pretty good against this team, except for Shadow Hypno, also is able to one-shot it with an Earthquake. Both Meganium and Galarian Stunfisk, I would say, are 2 of the top threats when unshielded to this team. But luckily Hypno is there to clean up, and I don't think an Earthquake will even one-shot. Yeah, it'll do just a bit over half, and Hypno's able to clean up. But like, once again, this is a game where I think Deoxys Defense could have performed about the same. It might have eaten a Frenzy. No, it might have eaten a Frenzy Plant actually from Meganium before it's able to get it down, and then Galarian Stunfisk could have Earthquaked it down. But yeah, not a bad set there. I think those 3 or 4 wins, something like that. Maybe just 3. I'm not sure. This next set here, this is the set where I played FP Sticks twice, so I cut out his first game here. Or maybe I didn't. Uh-oh. Yeah, it seems I forgot to. But we can see how, same matchup, he starts to switch up his strategy. Last time he swapped out, And you can see he had a bit of fast move lag there. I didn't notice it. If I had noticed it, I probably shouldn't have thrown this Leaf Blade because he doesn't shield it. I could have just farmed him down with Razor Leafs, but he goes into the Tropius, and I swap into the Shadow Hypno. So here's where I make a couple of mistakes with the Shadow Hypno, and this will go for most safe switches in general. So I go for the Fire Punch, and I don't shield the Leaf Blade. So not shielding one Leaf Blade is fine, but this next Leaf Blade comes around, and it's enough to pretty much KO me. The problem here is that the switch timer isn't up. I also don't take advantage of my 10-second switch timer, so now I'm locked into this Azumarill with my Bastiodon for a little bit, which is not ideal. The main reason this is bad is because now the Azumarill has enough for an Ice Beam, so I can't even swap my Shadow Hypno in to guarantee the win in the one shield. Luckily, I find out that this Azumarill doesn't actually have Hydro Pump, so my Bastiodon is fine versus it. But obviously these bubbles are starting to hurt a little bit. At this point, I am ready to sacrifice this Bastiodon, but it doesn't come, and I swap in the Shadow Hypno, go toe-to-toe with the Tropius, and I decide not to shield here. Electing to save the shield for the Bastiodon, which is potentially questionable because I end this game with the shield anyways. And I think the Shadow Hypno could have taken down Tropius before the Air Slash and brought a charge move into the Azumarill. So lots of mistakes on my part, and that just goes to show, despite like very good play from FP Sticks and some questionable plays on my part, sometimes the matchup does matter. So this is Shadow Hypno versus Shadow Gardevoir. Very good matchup. Hypno comes in. It's very hard to swap fast on Hypnos because you're looking at the Psychic icon on the top, and if it's a Deoxys Defense, I want to stay in. Whereas if it's a Hypno, I want to swap right away. So this guy's charged up quite a bit. It could be a Focus Blast, so I shield. Yeah, Hypno's running Focus Blast. That's how you lose a game right there, is if you let your Bastiodon get Focus Blasted. So shield that up, and this can only be a Thunder Punch. I'm going to exit this match with quite a bit of HP, and Bastiodon is soft countered by Azumarill, so like it's good to have HP. They can't really farm you all the way down. So Victreebel comes in against their Azumarill, and they just leave the game at that point. Their one play was the Focus Blast on Hypno. They must have had something really weak in the back, like a Mudboy or something like that. So this is Shadow Hypno versus Deoxys Defense. I really don't like this matchup that much, but people like to switch out of it for some reason. I'm going to shield up and hope it's a Rock Slide. It is, and if I believe they don't have Psycho Boost, I can farm them all the way down. I just guessed that they didn't have Psycho Boost, and I was lucky I was correct. So Skarmory comes in. Decent matchup for Shadow Hypno, but I think the Azumarill one is better. So they swap the Azumarill in because they think it's dead weight to the Shadow Hypno, and at this point, I'm feeling very good about this matchup. I can pretty much just throw these two Pokemon with however many shields to the Azumarill to beat it, and then my Bastiodon, regardless of shield advantage, can walk all over these the new Brave Bird Skarmories. Yeah, the change to Brave Bird is actually a huge buff to Bastiodon because Skarmories aren't running Flash Cannon anymore, which is really the only way they could deal with them. And Brave Bird also lowers their defense, so your farm down is a bit faster and you're a bit healthier if they do use it. So it's just a win-win all around for Bastiodon, which is nice in this case. This game, yeah, another Azumarill lead. I was getting very lucky with leads on this day. There were a couple bad ones, but mainly good ones. So this is the main benefit of Shadow Hypno, is versus Ferrothorn. So versus Ferrothorn, you can tank one Power Whip, and you can maintain pace with Fire Punches such that you can force two shields and a Fire Punch before they can. So these Bullet Seeds aren't doing anything, and I know I can't take another Power Whip, so I'll just throw shields, and I'm trying my best to not lose charge moves. So the way to do this when your opponent has a 3 turn move and you have a 4-turn move is that you're supposed to throw 2 confusions and then a charge move to lose the least amount of turns. If you throw a 1, that's not too bad either. But as you can see, I outpace him, and then in comes Azumarill, and I get to another Thunder Punch. But yeah, so I think the main reason to run Shadow Hypno over Deoxys Defense is being able to reliably deal with the Ferrothorns and having a better answer to the Alolan Marowak. So I had an instant switch there. I was actually trying to switch into his other Pokemon, but luckily I also got straight into his Stunfisk because I was able to beat him. If I'd swapped even a little bit slower, he would have beaten me with Earthquake. So, and this is the last battle with FP Sticks. It's really just the same as the other battles. So maybe I can just talk over it, just do a bit of a summary about what I thought of Shadow Hypno as a replacement for Deoxys Defense, and maybe what's next in store. So I do think Deoxys Defense still has its play. It felt like an overall better safe switch, but Shadow Hypno did have its advantages. I felt like it was better at controlling the lead, so if you do win the lead, it felt like it was much stronger. It had more options that it could come in on and just beat with less shields. It had more play versus things like Alolan Marowak, which I think is getting more common, and even well, they both have about the same play against Shadow Mawile, but you can definitely force more shields. I think Thunder Punch and Fire Punch is probably the best you can run right now. Fire Punch is more useful than ever for Galarian, Stunfisk, and Abomasnow, which seem to be everywhere. And Thunder Punch, obviously, I think is the one punch that you really need because of Azumarill and Skarmory. They're both going to be very common Pokemon that are going to be switched onto you. But I could see play with Shadow Ball just to counter some of the Psychics, or Focus Blast just in case the Darks keep gaining more popularity, like they have been recently. But at the same time, I really don't think you live to a Focus Blast versus an Umbreon. But yeah, I think the next video I'll be releasing is one, instead of replacing Deoxys Defense, we're going to go back to Deoxys Defense and we're going to try replacing Bastiodon with Galarian Stunfisk. Now, that'll be a bit more of like a gameplay change up than the stereotypical like go for switch advantage all the time. But I'm excited to see how that goes in the upcoming days. I know Pokemon Trainer Q used to use my team, and the end of season 2 switched over to Galarian Stunfisk as a replacement for Bastiodon, and he's doing relatively well on the leaderboard. So I know it is a very good team. It just might take me a little bit of time to get used to it, because it does seem like a bit of a playstyle change. But yeah, if you have any feedback, any comments, just feel free to let me know. Or if there's a particular safe swap or closer or Razor Leafer that you want me to try out, or even not a Razor Leafer, like a different grass type, that you want me to try out, just let me know in the comments, and I'll put it on the list. I know the reason I'm doing this Galarian Stunfisk as a closer lineup is because it was a recent request to kind of show how it plays, and I think it'll be a good one because it is a bit different. It is a bit tricky if you are kind of in the same mindset as the Bastiodon lineup, because it plays different than Bastiodon for sure. But yeah, thanks for watching.